thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Monica. I'm one of the facilitators here at Oxford Against Cutting. And what an absolute honour to be with you guys on International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day all. So I know a lot of you may be thinking, why have we decided to put the topic of female perpetrators up on this day? There is a reason and rationale behind it. Actually, we want to learn how we can break that vicious cycle that some of these women are caught up in, how we can empower change within that and also open dialogue. So just a bit of context, I'm also a PhD student as well. So I'm focusing on the topic of colorism and the role of women when it comes to engaging in that practice. I'm also joined here today by some of my OAC co-colleagues. So if you don't mind, can you just give everyone a wave? I do this all the time. Looking back. Perfect. So great. With these sessions, we do want them to be informal. There is no judgment. We want everyone to engage in conversation, but also if you don't feel comfortable to do so, that's not a problem as well. We have a few technicals to go over, so I'm going to hand over to Dot, just while she starts drinking.
Sorry. So happy International Women's Day, everybody. So we ask today that you please don't name anybody if you choose to talk about a harmful practice that has affected or might affect somebody you know. We encourage you to get support for families affected by harmful practices, but please do tell us privately if you'd like to talk about a concern. And you can do this by emailing me. And it's important that you know that if anybody told us anything today which made us concerned for a child or a vulnerable adult, then we would have to pass that information on. I'm sure this won't happen, it's never happened before, but if anybody were to be disrespectful to anybody else in the group today, then I might take them out of the Zoom call. We've got Tanya taking notes for us today, but only of the key themes that are raised during the session, and nobody will be named or identified in the notes. And obviously you can make comments in the chat box throughout the session as well. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Tot. And just to reiterate, if you have any questions or would like to engage in the conversation, you're more than welcome to do so. We will first lead the first half of the session with our guest speaker, Arifa Naeem. So thank you for joining us today. The session is being recorded, but we will stop recording during the Q&As, Dot, is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. Perfect.
So yeah, I'm going to kick off. So welcome, Arifa. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Monica.
You're very welcome, and happy International Women's Day to you. I'm going to kick over to you, and if you could just introduce yourself and what you do and your role, that'd be great.
Yeah. So my name is Arifa Naeem, and currently I'm working in Windsor and Maidenhead Council as a specialist worker. But I have experience of working in the community for the last 20 years nationally. Running the projects for the women, domestic abuse and stress management courses, but also working with the perpetrators. So I have experience of working with both sides. I'm also a trained therapist, and I run a lot of therapeutical group for women.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So the conversation will be in English. There may be some terminology that we pick up upon from our cultural experience and background, but we will explain those translations. So the first question for you, Arifa, is what factors may cause a woman to carry out honor-based abuse?
I think one of the things which I was doing a bit of research, and one of the things is honor-based abuse is a cultural practice, and women is brought up in the same environment, same cultural kind of traditional way, and they don't think as an abuse. The thing is they're protecting the honor of their family, either it's male or female. They will have the same mentality that they are protecting the honor of their family, and they have to commit this to protect the family and their traditions and their another children. So the key factor is the culture.
I think it's also So just for context, Arif and I had a catch up on Friday and we were discussing how there's almost like a generational cycle as well. So this idea of honour-based abuse or the element of protection has come in from their grandmas, their mothers, and it's almost protecting their cubs, and they see it as a form of love, like I'm doing this to protect them from the wider community, from the remarks that they may hear. And also a lot of the times about how they're perceived in front of their to-be in-laws or when it comes to marriage prospects. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Arifa.
No, you are absolutely right, Monica. But one of the thing is that, if you look at the honor-based abuse, so it's the cultural cycle is there, but also the teaching and understanding of it, that whether it's a female perpetrator or a male perpetrator, they are thinking that they are responsible for the honor of the family, and they don't see it as a crime. And this is the way they are being brought up in that sort of a cycle. And in looking at, their own family history, so for example, grandmother or grandfather who was involved in honor-based violence, they were seen as a hero and heroines who protected their family values, who protected their traditions. So they want to be a part of it. So you're absolutely right. It's like a cycle, and it's ongoing, sort of, without challenging it, it's ongoing for a long time.
But also, just to add to that as well, the element of migration, and you may not think, well, that doesn't have any relevance, but actually it's that heritage and that story they've come from. If they've come from Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, and they've made it all the way here, how do we maintain those traditions that we have back home? How do we maintain that link to, so that you're not seen as being too westernized or you've lost your cultural touch? And also, we discussed how the role doesn't just extend to mother-in-laws and daughters. Actually, we mentioned how it was sister-in-laws, daughter-in-laws. I know you'll touch on that.
Yeah, and I was reading one of the research which was held in 2018, and they did the research on 1,474 cases, which was flagged as honor-based abuse in South London via the police. And there was a 50 domestic violence agencies was involved in all of those cases. And one of the key factor which has come up, and this is, we are talking about England, that the main perpetrators were female. So this honor-based abuse was driven by mothers. So either it's we now this is something which we can talk about when we say mothers. Is it psychological pressure? Is it they did under pressure of the male domination that they have to do this? That's something, we can discuss it further on. But the main thing was that the main perpetrators were female. Mother-in-law, or sister-in-law, they were all colluding to do this abuse. And interestingly, the finding is that, especially in honor-based abuse, women are more involved than any other form of domestic abuse. So that's also very interesting to see that, when it comes to honor, women take more charge in that role, that and feel more responsibility under the pressure or under whatever, but they take it more responsibility, that we are responsible and we have to stop this.
Thank you. I think that brings me on quite nicely to my next question, which is still very relevant, but more towards the gender dynamics. So what role does gender dynamics play when it comes to honor-based abuse and female perpetrators?
I think, one of the things which I was looking into about, I think the main dominating factor is the male perpetrator and their pressure over the female, that they have to conduct certain, the abuse just to make sure that they are part of this tribe, they're part of this culture, they are part of this family, and to protect their wider family. So it is, again, when we talk about the female perpetrator and we talk about, the collaboration and controllers and how they are coercing with the male dominating factor, it comes under that, whatever they are doing under a psychological pressure of the male, of their family, and maybe on some extent to please them, or to show them they are part of it, and to show them that, they feel equally responsible for their family respect, which we normally say izzat. This is the word which is commonly used, which is about the family respect and the family honor, to keep it on the hold. So they feel that, if they are not going to be part of it, it's being seen that they are coercing against their family traditions and dynamics.
And just to add to that, with honor, is that it plays a role in so many aspects, doesn't it? When it comes to financials, when it comes to who you can get married to, which caste you can get married to, and even within Europe. So you could be from a Pakistani, Bangladeshi community, but who you can marry within that community as well. And also if dowry plays a role and how much you can ask for, whether the girl or the guy is deemed as a burden. So honor is huge. It's not just about marriage as well. It's also where you sit in the community, whether you're, even to the minute of things, of whether you're invited to functions or not because of how you are perceived by a family. Passing comments as well when you go, just for a Tesco shop or whatever along those lines. Arifa, do you mind touching on what we discussed on Friday about terminology as well? So we discussed how between men and women there are key terminology that are used. So for instance, ladala. So ladala means like mummy's boy, and that's very heavily played within the South Asian community, and that plays a role in how women protect the men more than they would their daughters. I'll hand over to you.
I think it is very interesting, the things that we were discussing about that, and especially when I run a lot of women's group, and I always touch base on that we are the one who are bringing up the boys, our daughters and our son, and we are the one who treat them differently since, they are born, and the expectations we have with them. For example, with the boys, it's like, he's not going to do any housework. He is going to take our name forward. And when he's going to be married, he's going to stay with us. And he's always going to be, he's going to listen to us and respect us and honor us. This is something which, as a women, we are feeding them. So, and sometimes I do share that as a woman, we are actually putting in their brain, in their mind, that you are superior and women are inferior. So the sisters, their responsibility is to listen to you. The woman's responsibility is to listen to men and always respect them, always, whatever they are saying, they are the head of the family. Women have to follow the man. We even though we agree or not agree, but like we are in that cycle of, what we have learned in our family and what our mother has taught us, we are teaching subconsciously sometimes our sons. And and then it's always come, if you have only son, the expectation is that he's always going to stay with you. And when his wife is going to come, the mother start having what you can say, the kind of I would say a bit of jealousy that my son is going towards his wife more and he's not going to be on my side. And abuse start from there. If we talk about the domestic abuse, then it's like, as a third party, she will start brainwashing her son about, your wife is like this, and this is how you treat. You are not a man if she doesn't listen to you. You need to have a control of finances. You have to have a control of, whatever is happening. It's sometimes, it's not in all the cases in domestic violence, but yes, on sometimes it's always on the background is the mothers or sisters, or this sort of relationship, sister-in-laws, this sort of relationship play a key role in the family dynamic.
Interrupt, sorry, I can't find the hand on this with Zoom. I know I've got it in Teams. I agree with everything you're saying, but when you are referring to honour-based abuse and about Asian community religion, I would just like to say I'm white British, and everything you're saying I absolutely can say is in my own mother, who is white British. I have an older brother, 3 years older than me, and absolutely, that whole dominance of a male over a female I've experienced. So I wouldn't suggest it is just, I perfectly respect what you're saying, but I'd just like to add that it is also white British culture. And I totally agree with it being, you know, the older generation's perception of the roles between gender and age, that sort of thing. And I see it even in other families of my own family, white British, and you know how my own auntie would perceive males over females. You know, I had when I was younger, but you're a girl, you know, that sort of thing. So it is still out there. You know, I do think it is still out there.
Angela, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing this. And thank you for, you know, and you are, even if you look at in our society generally, the games and the things which is for the girls in the supermarkets is very different from the boys.
Yeah.
And even in the schools, I'm not saying it's being done consciously, but subconsciously, it is there. The gender difference is there, and it's very open. Thank you for sharing and bringing up this issue. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
And definitely just to add to that, it's not limited to one cultural group. I think we see it in our day-to-day, even social media. You have so many campaigns with "Man Up" as the tagline for a Lynx advert for men. Like there is so much when it comes to women. Like now, yes, it's being portrayed more, but yeah, definitely agree with that. But I think the point just to emphasize for us as well on the gender dynamics is we're trying to show how this starts at a very young age. This habit of having control, trying to retain this honor, and how it almost, you can't blame the girls why they become victims to this, because that's all they hear and believe in, even within their community group. So let's say they have somebody else from that same community, they will have the same ideology. So that's how they'll then see men and, oh, this is the role I have to play. Like I'm a victim to it as well. Like growing up at school, very much it was for us like, oh no, let the guys walk in front of us. And I don't know why we did that, because my family weren't that way, but because that's what was expected in the culture, you almost become a sheep and you go along with, okay, no, I need to show this. You show respect regardless of gender, but there was an emphasis that the guys have more, you know, they can't, even when it comes to and how I know you'll agree with me, because we've had this discussion before, when it comes to Ramadan, and women aren't allowed to fast when they're on the periods, and it's like you have to shy away from the whole world. I'm not saying go and tell the whole world, but also the things that you're allowed to do, you have to hide away because of how would it make the men feel. So there are lots of different cultural aspects that come into it as well.
I absolutely agree, Monica. But like in Asian culture, in Jewish culture, especially when you touched on the issue of the women having a period, in some of the Jewish traditions, is the woman cannot stay at home. So she has to go in a separate room outside the house, because they're being perceived as not pure, not clean. So it's if we look at it, you know, this is across the whole cultures, the way the gender issue is, that women has always been seen as lesser than the men, and this is and the point which we were actually discussing, that so the mother is the main driving figure in actually raising her children and feeding these thoughts in the mind, is the female.
Yeah.
And the only way to break this cycle is if the females are more educated, and also, you know, if they are educated and they know actually what are their rights and responsibilities, then we can break this cycle.
So I wanted to move on to our next question, and it's slightly different to what was originally planned, but just to talk about the characteristics. So what sort of actions and activities do you see from female perpetrators in your experience?
In my experience, it's more psychological. It's more kind of a bringing shame and bringing, you know, kind of a mindset that, you know, it's all about shameful that if you are not going to listen to your father or not listen to your brother, or if you are going to conduct this, it's going to be a more shame on the family. So it's more of the psychological factors that the female perpetrators will bring. I mean, I was reading one of the paper, and in which they talked about how the mothers are the driving force in a lot of honor-based abuse, in a way that they, and also in a way that they come more in charge, more controllable of their daughters' activities. That they cannot do certain things, they cannot go out, they cannot talk to certain peoples, more in a way. But also, interestingly, the main factor, the main perpetrators are always the male. The woman is just the secondary, and following the instructions of the male, and following through that.
Arif, do you mind if I come and ask a question quickly in relation to this? Obviously, you just said there that the male seems.
I'm just going to jump in. So I'm really sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to jump in and just let you know that at this point we're recording. So you are very welcome to jump in and ask questions and comment. But at this point we are recording. So as long as you're happy and you know that, then you can carry on. Cool.
Absolutely fine. You were just saying about the male being sort of the perpetrator of it all to start off with, having investigated a few incidents of honour-based violence or based abuse. I always find that actually the male initiates it and then the female feels coerced into sort of continuing on that. Is that your perception as well?
Yes, that's this is what I think is absolutely right. I mean, they started it, but female feel obliged to be part of it as a member of the family. For example, mother or mother-in-law, she feels that she is also elderly of the family,
yeah.
And she is also responsible for the honor of the family. And there is another factor, that if she's not going to be part of it, or with the male perpetrator, she's also going to be victim.
Yeah.
She's also going to be treated like the daughter or anybody else, and maybe murdered. So there is also a fear factor in there, that she has to be a part of it, so that I am with you, and I am kind of respecting the honor, and I have full understanding. There is another psychological factor, because whenever daughter has done something wrong, it always comes to mother. This is you have taught her this, you are responsible for this. So mother feel that whatever the daughter is doing, right or wrong, she is responsible, and she has to pay price of it. And the paying price of it is that she has to be coercing with the male perpetrator, whether it's a son, it's a brother, or brother, son-in-law, and clear her heart, or clear her sins. This is how I would say, clear her sins around that.
And just to add to that point, so this is a real life example actually within our extended family. So two cousins had a love relationship. They chose to marry each other. A couple of days before the wedding, the guy decided that he wasn't ready for a wedding. He didn't want to get married to her for whatever reasons. He just wasn't at that point. And when it came down to it, his father was saying to the mum that this is a result of your upbringing. Your son is so shameless. They didn't understand. Then he blamed her for the whole breakdown of the marriage. When it came to communicating to other families, her own husband would tell other people, my wife is shameless and that's why she's brought up such a shameless kid. And then the pressure was put on her to, now you need to turn this around if you want to maintain my honor. So then it became a whole thing that she was very emotional around him, was saying this would be the death of me. Like, if you don't get married to her, like, what am I going to do? I can't even show my face to your father. He's not even talking to me. And it really wasn't her fault. Like, she was very much trying to take the side of her son to say, look, if you're not ready to get married, then don't ruin another girl's life. Like, I would rather not that happen. But for the husband, it was a case of honor and what would other people think. And it's not that we've brought this child up together, it's your upbringing, and now I'm going to hold you responsible, even though she had no influence over that decision.
Yes. Thank you, Monica.
You're welcome. I hope that answered your question, George.
Yeah, it does. And it was, for me, I feel actually if we say there's female perpetrators here, but actually, are they a victim in the first place? And we've got to look at it from both sides and say, I've personally never had it. I've never investigated something where a female has then been a perpetrator to her children, as far as we were aware at the time. But it's one of those ones we say about female perpetrators, but actually they're victims in the first place, and sort of it's about the gender dynamics, as you said already, and who's going to try and push it forward anyway.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
I think in a way that, the work I have done in domestic violence, and when I see the mother-in-laws are involved in a domestic violence incident, not particularly honor-based, but domestic violence incident. And when we worked with the mother-in-law, they were a victim 20 years ago, and they are carrying on the same kind of thing, because it's a lot of issues, a lot of psychological issues, like, if I wasn't happy, she's not going to stay happy. My husband never took me out to a park or somewhere. I always stayed at home. Why my son is taking my daughter-in-law out? So there is a lot of things. So we can say they were victims, but then again, I will say they have a choice. Like, for example, in sexual abuse cases, a lot of people who commit sexual abuse on children, it's their childhood experience that they were being abused when they were a child, but this is not an excuse. So I would say victim, but this is not an excuse to commit, even to coerce with honor-based violence and other domestic abuse things.
I completely agree with you.
I'd just like to say I agree. It's very difficult to unpick it when you're talking about generation after generation, because generally speaking, from my experience, the female perpetrator has actually been a victim of domestic violence or emotional abuse in some respects, but then they become a perpetrator, and it always underlines about whoever's going to recognise and make changes, and that is part of educating the next generation. It's fundamentally all that comes down to. But often a female perpetrator, particularly the older generation, don't recognise that they are a victim in the first place.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I also think that comes to the younger generations as well. So we're not denying that there aren't female perpetrators out there. There have been so many cases within family, friends, whatever, where we've seen the daughter-in-laws and daughters competing against each other, and it's trying to get a bit of value and to be recognized as well. So they will do mini mind games and do things like if the daughter-in-law has made some food, add some extra salt to it, so that when it comes out to the whole family, she's perceived as doing something wrong, and oh, look at how useless she is, and then it gives weight to the other girl or the other daughter-in-law. So it happens a lot, and it does many things you'll see of like her then influencing maybe her brother, saying, look, oh, your wife is texting someone so much, why is she laughing at her screen, and fueling these ideas. And it does come down to them trying to prove their worth, but also carry that weighting in the family that, oh no, my father-in-law sees me as the better daughter-in-law, or this is how the community view me as well. So there is definitely things like that happen in the younger generation as well.
In the younger generation, do you feel it's more like coercive control sort of aspect then, rather than physical violence, physical abuse?
From my experience, it's been coercive, but I'm sure, Arif, I don't know for your work.
No, it's similar. It's more of the coercive, kind of a way. Katie have just asked a very good question, and I didn't know, Katie, you are watching Pakistani dramas. But it's very interesting, and it's a very good point about media. At the moment, when we are living in 2021, in Pakistan, there is drama going on, and it's about a young university girl and a professor. And the university and the professor tried to, I would say, they had a communication that, if you need more marks, you need to sleep with me. something like this, and that girl has raised her concerns, and it has become, and she went to the social media and she talked about it, that this is the professor who is not nice, and all of that, and she had a boyfriend who was supporting her. But it comes under the whole family. For that family, it becomes that this girl is bringing shame on us because she's going out and talking about such a issue. And then that professor killed himself because it was on a social media. And the boyfriend left the girl because he was feeling that, because of them, they raised it in the social media and the professor killed himself. So he feels responsible. So it's a different dynamic how the media is playing role, that, the woman, if she's suffering, she shouldn't be raising her voice. She shouldn't be talking about these issues, because if she's going to talk about this issue and the other person kill himself, she is responsible again. So everybody is making her responsible for the death of the professor. Just, to show, I think it's about, how media control the mind and how media is portraying the information in the community and in the public. And I know that, when I was young, I used to watch a lot of Bollywood movies. And in Bollywood movies, it was, when I was growing up, I used to see that the woman is always singing a song around the man saying, I'm your slave, I will make you happy in any way. I'm like your, I'm going to look after you. It was all about praising the man. So the female is doing that. And it stuck in my head that, this is what is the role of the woman, that this is what she's supposed to be doing. And if you are doing this, you would be seen as a good person, a good woman. So it's very, very kind of, I think media and the way the issues come in the media and the way it's been portrayed make a huge difference on young people's mindset.
But also, so I don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't watched the drama. So Kate, if you haven't, cover your ears. But at the end of the storyline, you see that she made false claims against this professor. So it wasn't true. There was no truth in it. But what her fiance at that time did, rather than disclosing that and saying, no, she's the reason why he has committed suicide, everything that she's done is wrong, he chose to cover that lie up because she is a woman and she wouldn't be able to, the community wouldn't be able to handle that. Her family wouldn't be able to handle any more shame that she could potentially bring, even though the shame that she did put on herself, the shame she put on herself was self-inflicted because she thought that was a way of showing her love to her fiance. So it was very much, let's protect this female image that she has. She can't be that evil or do something like this.
But again, Monica, I kind of get this when I was watching it. But one of the things which I was a bit concerned about, that in countries like Pakistan, India, where there is so much male domination, and hardly women say anything, and even if she raise her voice. So this kind of a portrait of drama will show that even the woman is raising voice, it's not necessarily, it's true. You understand what I'm trying to say? That, she's lying. She's not being honest. So in third world countries where women already been suppressed so much, so there was kind of things was coming up into, different plays and everything, that if somebody is suppressing you, you need to raise your voice. But, with this sort of drama is showing that, the way that it's been portrayed, that woman is a liar. She has that evil side, so you don't need to believe on her and you don't need to trust her. Kind of a thing, which will suppress again the girls not to raise their voice.
And there is always a question of credibility of whether did this happen. So there's another drama, and Tracy, you can watch them on YouTube, but the channel is called ARY. But on YouTube you get the English subtitles. There is another drama that's come out recently about a girl who was raped in Pakistan, and her own mother and sister are questioning her credibility of whether this happened. So she's identified a victim, but they've said to her, no, you weren't in your right mind, you don't know this would happen, just because they believe that male is so innocent. And the storyline is about her pushing back. But yeah, there is always a question of credibility. So in the first drama we've mentioned, the girl was wrong. She did make false claims. That's what the storyline ends up to be. But in other dramas, you'll see how her credibility is questioned, whether she brought it on herself as well. So all these little things, and whether if she wasn't such an outspoken girl going to university, would this have happened to her if she stayed at home? So there are all these factors that play in, and that's often manipulated or played across by the mothers or the sisters. So this is her own mother and sister saying to her, like, well, did you bring it onto yourself? Whereas what you'd want to hear at that time is comfort. How do we find a solution to this? Like, how do we report this? And it was the exact opposite.
Hi, Monica, could I just say something?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say about, not necessarily about dramas, but about women who've been sexually abused in any shape or form. I think particularly in the South Asian community, you know, the essence is to keep quiet and not say anything, which you refer to on drama. But I think also because women are particularly brought up that way, don't raise your voice about sexual abuse. We have someone in extended family who was sexually abused, and her mother wouldn't believe her. And it went on for years and years, and it was a family member. And I think it's really difficult. And I don't think, as someone said, I think it was Angela, forgive me, these things don't just happen in the South Asian community, they happen in lots of community. But I do feel with the South Asian community, there's so many other barriers. I mean, we've talked about female perpetrators and are they victims, or are they this, are they that? It's so multi-layered, it's so difficult to sometimes for even us as South Asian women to understand. But we need to encourage, which Arifa was saying, is the way we bring up our children, our girls and our boys as mothers. It's our duty, if we have the opportunity, and we have to try and get the opportunity, to change the narrative around all these issues, which are extremely complicated and very difficult to understand.
And that's equality, isn't it? That again is part of the educated world. You know, I've seen my son, and I've got a boy and a girl as well, the same as I had an older brother. I've got an older son and my daughter younger. So, you know, that they are now adults, and I've brought them up exactly the same, and they're, you know, have educated minds. They understand equality. You know, my daughter's going to university, the same as what my son had the opportunity, and that's where, you know, life evolves, isn't it? So absolutely, I'm really proud to see that. But I absolutely agree about the thought of not being believed, and you know, it's unspoken. It is taken for me to have my children reach the age they are, for me to feel strong enough to know that what I believe and what I've seen and what I've heard is absolutely right.
Yeah.
Thank you both for your contributions. So I'm just going to move on to our last question, because I want to keep the last half an hour for you guys to ask us questions. So my last one for you, Arifa, is what do we do to support women in these situations, or to stop them getting caught up in this cycle? Like, what support can we do as individuals? Yeah, over to you.
I think education, educate them. I mean, this is something which I think, and show them the different perception, you know, and challenge their views, and you know, make them to think with the different narratives. I think this is what I'm doing, and I think that, you know, it works. Unless we are going to challenge you know, the cultural beliefs they have and educate them about this, we cannot change anything. Empower them, give them the confidence to stand for the right thing and to say no to the wrong thing, and to have that belief system. This is the only way we can break this cycle. Otherwise, I personally think, like, you know, we were talking about media, we were talking about the way we are being brought up. Even a lot of young girls that I have seen are being brought up they're born here, they've never been to, you know, from South Asian community, but they've never been to their Pakistan or India or that. But the way they are being brought up, they are with the same mindset of, the role of the women and about the honor and about, the other factors that the men are superior. They are with the same mindset, even though they are going to the school in this system where they talk about the equality of gender and everything. But when they are coming back home, they're coming back to that environment where they are being taught the same thing. So I think it's all about educating women. I also believe educating men is equally important, but today we are talking about females. So it's about educating them, empower them, break that cycle of, I do a lot of work around the difference between culture and religion, which, challenge their way of belief, because a lot of women will say, for example, if I'm working with a Muslim woman, she will say, in Islam, this is how the woman is, but it's not true. This is what they're being told, that in Islam, women is inferior, but in reality, it's not. It's equal. So it's about, challenge their views and give them the right information and empower them with that. And this is something that I felt is, it really worked. The people I worked with, whether it was the grandmother, whether it was mother-in-laws, whether it was mothers or daughters or sister-in-law, this really worked with them.
I completely echo that, and I just do think I know we're focusing on females, but getting males involved in that conversation, I hold my hands up. I'm very fortunate to come from a family where my dad has empowered and treated all of us equally. So there's three of us in total, but he's seen all of us the same. There's been no difference. But also when it comes to these small things that you see happening, because they start small, you see someone being favoured a bit more because of this, you need to challenge it at that point, so that it doesn't turn into a norm. And that's unfortunately what happens within these families or these community groups. But also just support initiatives like the Pink Laddu initiative. So very traditionally in South Asian cultures, when a boy is born, they would give out laddu, which is a Indian sweet. But when it came to the girls, they'd either give half the amount or none at all. So there is an initiative called the Pink Laddu initiative where they give out laddus when girls are born as well, and they're trying to normalize it. It doesn't matter what sex the child is, you embrace that journey, you embrace that happiness. There's lots of great organizations like ourselves that are encouraging women to be involved in the dialogue along with men. I don't think we can shy away of men not being involved, like brothers, friends. They need to be advocates, and also not to make assumptions. You may assume that one thing is this way, and that's what we need to empower women to do, is not to make these assumptions that this links to this. But it is a huge generational thing, a cycle that we need to break.
But Monica, on the same time, I just want to mention one thing. I know we talk about women empowerment, but we also need to empower men with the right information. And, this is how we can work to break this cycle. Otherwise, if one side is getting empowered, the other side is not, we will come across the same conflict again and again.
Yeah.
Sorry, Josh, I cut you.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say, do you feel that with the younger generations now, that due to things like social media, things like today, International Women's Day, clearly it's very well sort of publicised, it's on social media and everything else. Do you feel that's starting to make positions sort of change a little bit, trying to help improve the sort of the younger generations' sort of perceptions and the fact they're going to sort of go to school and sort of be taught about all different cultures and everything else, and sort of get away from the fact that women do this, men do this? Do you feel that social media is helping that, and particularly the younger generation? Do you feel it will sort of the generations will grow up and it will not be such a normalised way of life?
I think on some extent, but I will tell you my experience working with young people. So I worked as a youth worker in one of the and one of the catchment area was a grammar school. And I was running a group of Asian boys. And interestingly, that was really interesting to see that they were studying in a very good school and getting educated about the equality and everything. But when they were communicating with me, this is 15, 16-year-olds, and they were saying, you know what, we are going to marry in Pakistan because we will have a wife from there. And when she comes here, she will clean the house, cook the food for us, and, have children. But we are going to have one girlfriend here because, we need to have a girlfriend, and that woman cannot do anything. So this is what they are learning from their home environment. They have seen their fathers doing it, even though, so the environment is really, really powerful. What they have seen their uncles, everybody is doing, even though they were very bright young boys, and they were studying in one of the top institutes in Slough. And very bright future, everything. But in terms of the family mindset, they have this mindset, which was
how do we change that then? How do we go about sort of changing that?
You see, this is what the thing is. This we can change through parents. So parents is the key thing. What they are seeing in the home environment, what they are listening from the mothers, like I said it before.
Yeah.
For example, the moms, if the mom is suffering and the father have two girlfriends outside and she's not challenging and she's saying it's absolutely fine, this is what they are learning, subconsciously. So I was a youth worker, and then I changed it to working with the families, because I thought just working with young people is not good enough. We have to change from here. Unless we are going to change, the parents, nothing is going to change.
But I do just want to say that I do think social media is a great tool. Like, we shouldn't shy away from the content that we put out there. I myself follow lots of accounts which show that how in South Asian communities in particular, how women do have rights, and when it comes to Muslims as well, so I'm coming from a Muslim background, actually what the Quran does teach, like let's get rid of those myths, because a lot of the times they are myths, and what's played out in the media, what people perceive or what are taught by community leaders are actually myths. And there are really empowering accounts, but I think coming back to Arifa's point, that's all fair and well when you see that social media for an hour and so, and that's all you see on your feed. But when you come back home, and the pressure of having that at home is really overwhelming. You're fighting against so many forces of what, that's your livelihood, that's your home, that's your family. It's all fair and well social media saying this, but yes, let's change the narrative. I think that's what it needs to come down to. Let's change the narrative across all platforms. So I was just going
to say something about Arifa's point about when boys in particular go home or girls go home. I think some women, they want to change. They really do. They want to change the situation, but they don't have the power to. And particularly sometimes when women don't have financial, have any finances that they can, you know what I mean? They don't have any finances, or the man has the finance, is controlling the finance. And I do think a lot of women, particularly I would say as a Pakistani woman, they do want to change their situation at home, but they don't have the power to. And they're the ones that are really, really hard to reach. I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. So at this point, we are done with our session. So Dot, if you don't mind, if you could stop recording.